Once upon a time, in lands shrouded by mist and mystery, there lived creatures of such beauty and terror that their very names are whispered only in the softest of tones. Fairies. These enigmatic beings, woven into the fabric of folklore across countless cultures, have long captured the human imagination. From the mischievous pixies of England to the noble and haunting Tuatha De Danann of Ireland, the tales of fairies have both enchanted and unnerved us for centuries. Good evening, and welcome to another captivating episode of SkaryTales, where myths and legends come alive under the moonlit sky. My name is Mr. Rook, your guide through these enigmatic hallowed halls where we illuminate the obscure and whisper life into the forgotten. Tonight we embark on a journey into the very heart of fairy lore. We shall delve into the origins of these ethereal beings, explore the myriad forms they take, and uncover the truths behind some of the most haunting and captivating fairy myths from around the world. So light your lanterns and keep close to the path, for the world of fairies is one where the line between reality and fantasy blurs, and where danger and delight walk hand in hand. Welcome, dear friends, to SkaryTales. The world of the fair folk is as vast and varied as the stars themselves. The term which we so often use today finds its roots in the old French fairy, a word that once spoke of a realm of enchantment, the land of the fae, a place where magic was not merely believed in but lived and breathed by beings of extraordinary power. But what are these beings, these fairies? Across the many cultures that have whispered their tales, fairies have been seen in countless forms. In Celtic lands, they are guardians of the natural world, protectors of the forests, rivers, and hills. These beings, though often depicted as delicate and small, command the respect of those who dwell within their territories. For to anger a fairy is to invite misfortune of the most peculiar kind. Yet not all fairies are the benign, fluttering creatures that modern tales would have us believe. Some, like the malevolent spirits of the Scottish Unseelie Court, are as dangerous and malign as the darkest of nights. These fairies delight not in kindness, but in causing harm and leading travelers astray under the cover of darkness. As we journey through the lands where these tales were born, we shall meet many of these beings, some familiar, others perhaps less so. From the verdant hills of Ireland, where the Tuatha De Danann still holds sway in the hidden places, to the shadowy forests of Eastern Europe, where the Samodivas weave their spells, each step will bring us closer to the heart of these ancient legends. But before we embark on our travels, let us first explore what makes a fairy, well, a fairy. We'll delve into their origins, their traits, and the roles they've played in the folklore of different cultures. For to truly understand the fair folk, we must first see them as they were once seen. Not as mere figments of imagination, but as mighty beings of power and mystery. As we stand at the threshold of these ancient tales, let us first consider the origins of these enigmatic beings. The word fairy, as we've mentioned, carries with it a legacy stretching back centuries, if not millennia. The term itself finds its roots in the early modern English word fairy, a reference to the realm of the fays, the enchanted domain of these mystical beings in Scottish and English folklore. But the etymology, much like the beings themselves, has deeper origins. Indeed, the old French word fae referred to a woman skilled in magic, one who knew the power and virtue of words and stones. This, in turn, can be traced back to the Latin fata, and even further to the Proto-Indo-European root ba, meaning to shine. Originally, the word fairy encompassed more than just these elusive creatures. It referred to an illusion or enchantment, the very land of the fays and those who dwelled within. In modern English, fairy has come to describe these beings individually, with the fairies as the plural, yet throughout history they have been known by many names: the wee folk, people of peace, fair folk, and good folk, to name but a few. Yet, while the word itself may have evolved over time, the beings we now call fairies have long been part of the human experience, their origins as mysterious and multifaceted as the myths surrounding them. Tales of similar creatures began to emerge in different cultures across the globe: Celtic, Germanic, ancient Greek, and even in the Arabic and Sanskrit traditions. Despite these varied origins, the image of the fairy that endures in the collective imagination is largely European, steeped in the rich loam of Celtic and Germanic folklore. As Christianity spread across Europe, the perception of fairies transformed dramatically. Once perhaps regarded as minor deities or nature spirits, their status shifted in the Christian worldview. Some believed these beings to be the souls of the dead, lingering in the world between worlds, neither here nor there. Others, influenced by Christian doctrine, viewed them as fallen angels, not wicked enough to be cast into the fires of hell, yet not quite virtuous enough to remain in heaven. Indeed, the true origins of fairies are as elusive as the beings themselves, with four main theories attempting to unravel the mystery. Some suggest they are the secret or hidden people, like the Tuatha De Danann of Celtic myth, driven into the hills and caves by a conquering people. Others propose that they are degenerated gods or heroes, whose importance has faded over time. Another theory personifies them as nature spirits, embodiments of the natural world's untamed forces. Lastly, there is the notion that they are ancestral spirits of the dead, guardians of the land and its secrets, forever bound to the world they once knew. These varied interpretations remind us that the fair folk are not mere figments of imagination, but complex entities woven into the very fabric of human belief and experience. To speak of fairies is to speak of something far older than the word itself, a connection to a time when the boundaries between the natural and supernatural were fluid, and the world was alive with unseen forces. But not all fairies are benevolent. In some cultures they are seen as malevolent beings, tricksters, or even demons. The Seelie and Unseelie courts of Scottish law illustrate this duality well. The Seelie Court, with its fair and noble beings, might bestow blessings upon those they favored. The Unseelie Court, on the other hand, were the dark fairies, delighting in mischief and harm. Fairies, as you see, are as diverse as the cultures that birthed them. They can be kind or cruel, helpful or harmful, beautiful or grotesque, and they are always, always powerful. To encounter a fairy is to step into a world where the ordinary rules no longer apply, where time itself can stretch or shrink, and where the smallest of actions can have the most extraordinary consequences. And so, before we step further into this enchanted realm, let us remind ourselves of this: to respect the fair folk, to treat them with caution and reverence, for their world is one of wonder and peril in equal measure. Let us now turn our gaze to the mist-shrouded hills of Ireland, a land where the veil between our world and the other world is said to be at its thinnest. Here the fairies, known as the Unseelie or the Tuatha De Danann, are not merely mischievous sprites, but powerful, ancient beings, revered and feared in equal measure. These are the remnants of a once great race, the Tuatha De Danann, who, according to myth, were the gods and goddesses of Ireland before they were driven underground by mortal men. The Tuatha De Danann were said to be a race of godlike people, skilled in magic and warfare, who descended upon Ireland in a great mist. They brought with them 4 treasures: the Sword of Light, the Spear of Lugh, the Cauldron of the Dagda, and the Stone of Destiny, each imbued with its own formidable power. After their defeat by the Milesians, the last wave of invaders in Irish myth, the Tuatha De Danann retreated into the hills and mounds, becoming the Unseelie or the Unseelie, the people of the mounds, who now dwell in the otherworldly She. Upon their arrival, the Tuatha De Danann clashed with the Fir Bolg, the then dominant race in Ireland, in what is known as the First Battle of Mag Tuired. The Tuatha emerged victorious, establishing their dominion over the land. However, their rule was not to last, for they were soon challenged by the Fomorians, a race of monstrous beings. In the Second Battle of Mag Tuired, the Tuatha De Danann despite suffering great losses, triumphed once more, but at a heavy cost. Their king, Nuada, was slain, and the balance of power in Ireland was forever changed. Yet these fair folk are not content to stay hidden. No, they frequently cross the threshold into our world, especially during the twilight hours when the boundaries between our reality and theirs blur. They are known to be both benevolent and malevolent, capable of great kindness but also terrible vengeance, particularly when their sacred places, those ancient mounds, circles and groves, are disturbed. It's said that on certain nights, such as Samhain or Beltane, the Iosi emerge from their hidden palaces, moving freely among us, and woe betide any who would cross their path without showing the proper respect. These fairies are not the diminutive, winged creatures of children's tales. They are tall, often beautiful and terrifying in their power. They might bestow blessings or curses, lead a traveler astray, or even spirit them away to the other world, never to return. And so, in Ireland, the fairies are not mere figments of folklore, but a living part of the landscape, woven into the very fabric of the land and its people. To speak of Ireland is to speak of the Sidhe, and their presence is felt in every hill, every grove, every stone that stands alone in a field. As we journey further into the realm of the fairies, it's important to understand that these beings, though often grouped together under one name, are as varied and diverse as the cultures that birthed them. Across the world, the characteristics and traits of fairies can differ wildly, influenced by the landscapes they inhabit, the people who believe in them, and the stories passed down through generations. In the green hills and shadowy forests of the British Isles, fairies are most commonly associated with nature. They are guardians of the wild places, woods, rivers, and glades, where they ensure the balance of life remains undisturbed. Here we find a rich tapestry of beings, pixies, sprites, and elves, each with their own distinct characteristics and behaviors. The pixies of Cornwall and Devon, for example, are often depicted as mischievous, small creatures, leading travelers astray with their playful antics. They are known to inhabit the wild moorlands, where they dance in circles to the music of frogs and crickets. In contrast, sprites, often associated with elemental forces, are depicted as ethereal beings connected to nature. They might be found flitting through the air, dancing on the wind, or hiding among the leaves in the dense forests of Europe. And then there are the elves, whose imagery has evolved significantly over time. From the wee, playful figures of earlier folklore to the tall, majestic beings immortalized in modern fantasy literature. These fairies are often seen as diminutive figures, flitting through the undergrowth, their presence marked by a sudden, unexplained rustling of leaves or the flash of a tiny figure out of the corner of one's eye. But make no mistake, their small size belies great power. For even the most benevolent of fairies, those who might bless a crop or guide a lost traveler, can turn vengeful if disrespected or wronged. My dear friends, gather round, for I have a tale that dances upon the edge of history and the other world, a tale shrouded in mystery and whispered through the ages. We journey now to the late 17th century, to the quaint Scottish parish of Aberfoyle, where a certain Robert Kirk, a minister of the cloth, found himself entangled in the enigmatic web of the fairy folk. Robert Kirk was no ordinary man of the pulpit. No, indeed, he was a scholar of the unseen, a man deeply intrigued by the mysteries that lay just beyond the veil of our world. In his manuscript, The Secret Commonwealth, he dared to document the secrets of the fairies, those elusive beings who dwell in the hidden corners of our reality. Kirk's work, rich in its detail, speaks of the fairies not as mere figments of imagination, but as real, powerful entities, spirits who live alongside us, invisible to the untrained eye. But, as is often the case with such pursuits, curiosity can lead one down perilous paths. In 1691, not long after completing his manuscript, Robert Kirk was found dead under circumstances that can only be described as mysterious. His lifeless body was discovered near a fairy hill, a place long believed to be a portal to the other world, where the fairies held sway. Now, the locals, wise in the ways of the old law, whispered that Kirk's death was no accident. They believed, with a chill in their hearts, that the fairies had taken him in retaliation for revealing their secrets, secrets they had guarded jealously for centuries. It was said that his spirit was not truly dead, but trapped within the fairy realm, held as a prisoner by the very beings he had sought to understand. The legend of Robert Kirk endures to this day, a chilling reminder of the perils that await those who dare to peer too deeply into the unknown. His manuscript, The Secret Commonwealth, remains a cornerstone of Scottish fairy lore, a testament to his daring and his doom. It is a story that serves to remind us all that the fairies, those elusive denizens of the other world, are not to be trifled with, for their reach is long and their vengeance swift. As we turn from those whose curiosity about the unseen realms led to an untimely demise, we find ourselves drawn deep into the shadowy world of the Corrigans, those bewitching spirits of Breton folklore. These ethereal beings, deeply rooted in the ancient myths of Brittany, have long haunted the imagination of those who wander near their sacred groves and springs. The Corrigans are often depicted as strikingly beautiful female spirits, their long flowing hair cascading like a river of night, sometimes blonde but more often a deep raven or fiery red. Their eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, could captivate even the most steadfast of men. Yet beneath this enchanting exterior lies a darker nature, one that has inspired both reverence and fear. In the Breton tradition, the Corrigans are believed to dwell within ancient forests, particularly near streams, springs, or fountains. These are not merely places of water, but gateways to the other world, where the veil between our realm and theirs is perilously thin. These spirits, possibly the remnants of pagan druidesses, possess an alluring beauty when seen at dusk or night, their enchanting appearance hiding the truth of their nature. Yet, by the light of day, their eyes turn red, their hair becomes white, and their skin reveals itself to be wrinkled and aged. Thus they shun the daylight, preferring the cover of night to work their charms. On the night of Samhain, they are said to lurk near dolmens, ancient stone tombs where the veil between worlds is thinnest, lying in wait for unsuspecting victims. It is said that these Corrigans have the power to seduce mortal men who drink from their waters, luring them into a fatal embrace. The Seigneur of Nan was a devoted husband, deeply in love with his wife. One day, she asked him to gather May blossoms from the forest. As he rode out to fulfill her request, he grew thirsty and stopped to drink from a fountain. It was here that he encountered a beautiful Corrigan, an enchanting yet perilous creature of the woods. She demanded that he submit to her desires, but the seigneur, faithful to his wife, angrily refused. In her wrath, the Corrigan cursed him, foretelling that he would meet his end within 3 days. Upon returning to his castle, the seigneur, knowing his fate was sealed, went straight to the church rather than to his wife. The priest, his mother, and others who knew the truth kept the secret from his wife, hoping to spare her from the pain. But 3 days later, as the curse foretold, the seigneur met his tragic end. When his wife finally learned of the truth, her heart broke from the sorrow, and she too passed away. The two were laid to rest beside each other, a poignant testament to their enduring love and the tragic price of defying the mystical forces of the Corrigan. In the mist-shrouded forests of Broceliande, the Corrigans are also implicated in the abduction of mortal infants. It is said that they would take these children, raising them as their own, often replacing the human child with one of their own kind, a changeling. Their actions, though cruel, speak to their deep connection with the natural world, a world they seek to protect, even if it means striking fear into the hearts of men. The Corrigans, with their malevolent beauty and their association with water, share much in common with other figures from Celtic and Arthurian legend. One such figure is Ceridwen, the Welsh goddess who, like the Corrigans, was linked to sacred waters. But perhaps the most striking parallel can be found in the Lady of the Lake, a figure who embodies both the enchantment and the danger of these ancient spirits. The Lady of the Lake, one of the most enigmatic characters in Arthurian legend, exhibits many of the characteristics of the Corrigans. She too resides near a mystical body of water in Broceliande, a place of great power and mystery. Yet, unlike the often malevolent Corrigans, the Lady of the Lake is remembered as a more benevolent figure. She is the one who bestowed the sword Excalibur upon King Arthur, a gift that would become the symbol of his right to rule. The Lady of the Lake also plays a crucial role in the upbringing of one of Arthur's greatest knights, Lancelot. After abducting the infant from Queen Elaine de Benoit, she raises him in her underwater palace, teaching him the skills and virtues that would make him one of the most renowned knights of the Round Table. Yet, even the Lady of the Lake has her darker side, particularly in her dealings with Merlin, Arthur's wizard and counselor. Merlin, though gifted with the power of divination, could not foresee his own downfall at the hands of the Lady of the Lake. Infatuated with her, Merlin taught her all his magical secrets in the hopes of winning her love, but she had no intention of yielding to his desires. Instead, she used the very magic he had taught her to confine him, imprisoning him within or under a large stone, a fate eerily reminiscent of the curses bestowed by the Corrigans. Thus, in the figure of the Lady of the Lake, we see the complex duality that defines the Corrigans, beings of great power and beauty, capable of both kindness and cruelty. Their stories, whether told in the dark forests of Brittany or the legendary courts of Arthur, remind us of the ancient and enduring connection between the natural world and the supernatural, a connection that continues to enchant and terrify us to this day. In the annals of British folklore, we find the fair folk of Wales, the Tylwyth Teg, a name that dances upon the tongue like the very beings it describes. These fairies hold a place of singular allure, woven from the same thread as the Corrigans and the enchanted ladies of Arthurian legend. Where the Corrigans are wild and willful, their beauty masking a more sinister intent, the Tylwyth Teg possess a grace and elegance that, at first glance, might seem benign. But, as with all fairies, there is always more lurking beneath the surface. The Tylwyth Teg, or the Fair Family, as they are known, are the ethereal denizens of the Welsh countryside. They are not the diminutive winged creatures of Victorian fancy, but rather human-like in form, tall with fair, nearly porcelain skin, golden or silver hair, glassy blue eyes, and a beauty that seems to shimmer in the moonlight. They are said to dwell in the wild, remote places of Wales, hidden glens, misty lakes, and the ancient hills that rise like sentinels across the landscape. Take heed, though, for it would be a grave mistake to think them mere pastoral spirits. The Tylwyth Teg are known for their revels, grand and otherworldly gatherings where time itself seems to bend to their will. It is said that those who stumble upon these nocturnal dances, drawn by the music that floats upon the night air, may find themselves irresistibly pulled into the fairies' ring. And woe betide the mortal who joins the dance, for when the spell is broken, they may find that years, sometimes centuries, have passed in the blink of an eye. Yet these fair folk are not all merriment and mischief. They are known to abduct humans and carry them off to their fairy realm. Once there, they are often forced into slavery or married off. Once there, few ever return. It is known that water, too, is sacred to the Tylwyth Teg. In their connection to the lakes and rivers of Wales, we see a reflection of the Corrigans and their watery domains. One of the most haunting tales is that of the fairy bride of Llyn y Fan Fach, a story that echoes the Corrigans' tragic love affairs, yet is uniquely Welsh in its melancholy beauty. The tale begins in the serene, mist-shrouded valley of Llyn y Fan Fach, where a young farmer, enchanted by the sight of a beautiful maiden emerging from the lake, falls deeply in love. She was one of the Tylwyth Teg, a being of both this world and the next. Moved by his devotion, she agreed to marry him, but with one condition: he must never strike her, not even in jest. For years they lived happily, raising children and prospering, until one day, in a moment of frustration, the farmer forgot himself and struck her. True to her word, the fairy bride returned to the lake, taking their children with her, leaving the farmer to live out his days in sorrow and regret, forever gazing upon the waters that had once brought him such joy. And so, as with all fairy tales, there is a lesson in the legend of the fairy bride of Llyn Fan Fach, a reminder of the delicate balance between the human and the supernatural, a balance that, once broken, can never be truly restored. For a fairy's heart beats fierce and free, untamed by the bonds that hold our mortal hearts. The Tylwyth Teg, like their counterparts across the Celtic world, remain a potent symbol of the mystery and magic that lie just beyond the veil of our everyday lives. Let us now turn our attention to a myth that has sent shivers down the spines of countless generations, a tale rooted in fear, mystery, and a much darker side of fairy lore. I speak, of course, of the changeling myth, a story that has haunted the folklore of Europe for centuries. The changeling, as the story goes, is a fairy child left in place of a human child stolen by the fairies. In the dead of night, when the veil between our world and the fairy realm is at its thinnest, the fairies are said to slip into the homes of unsuspecting families, spiriting away their newborns and leaving behind one of their own, an otherworldly creature that resembles the stolen child, but is not quite right. The reasons for this exchange are as varied as the cultures that tell the tale. In some traditions, the fairies are said to covet the beauty and innocence of human children, desiring them as companions or servants in their hidden realms. In others, the changeling serves a more sinister purpose, as the fairies seek to bolster their own ranks with human strength or to torment those who have somehow offended them. But how does one recognize a changeling, you may ask? The answer lies in the unsettling behavior of the child left behind. Changelings are often described as being sickly, with strange, unnatural features or behaviors that betray their true nature. They may have an insatiable appetite, a piercing, unearthly cry, or an eerie, knowing look in their eyes, far too wise for their years. In some cases, the changeling may even possess the ability to speak or walk far earlier than a normal child, further fueling the parents' suspicions. One particularly chilling tale comes to us from 12th century Ireland. In a small village nestled among the hills, a young mother noticed that her infant son, once lively and full of joy, had grown sullen and withdrawn. His once rosy cheeks had turned an ashen grey, and his bright eyes now held a strange, unsettling depth. The villagers whispered of changelings, and in her desperation the mother sought the counsel of the village elder, a wise woman well versed in the ways of the fair folk. The elder advised her to place the child near the hearth, for it was believed that the presence of fire could reveal a changeling's true nature. As the flames danced and crackled, the child, who had been silent for days, suddenly began to wail, a high, keening cry that echoed through the cottage. The elder then instructed the mother to boil an eggshell filled with water, a ritual said to confuse the changeling. Upon witnessing this bizarre act, the child is said to have laughed, exclaiming in a voice far too mature for its form, "I have seen the acorn before the oak, but never have I seen the like of this." With the changeling's true identity revealed, the mother followed the elder's final piece of advice, placing the creature outside on the threshold overnight, hoping that the fairies would return and take back their own, restoring her true child to her arms. And so it was said to have happened. By morning, the changeling had vanished, and in its place lay the mother's healthy human child, returned from the other world. But not all changeling stories end so fortuitously. In some darker tales, the human child is never seen again, and the changeling grows to adulthood, always out of place, never fully belonging to the world of humans or fairies. The fear of changelings was so pervasive that it led to a variety of protective measures and rituals, some of them rather cruel, aimed at exposing or driving away the fairy imposter. One method involved placing the child near a fire or in a hot oven. If the child was truly a changeling, it was believed the heat would force the fairy to reveal itself and flee, returning the human child in its place. Other methods included leaving the child out overnight, exposing it to iron, or using holy water to drive out the fairy influence. Sadly, these superstitions often led to tragic outcomes, as the true cause of a child's illness or deformity, whether due to disease, malnutrition, or a genetic condition, was misunderstood and misattributed to fairy interference. One of the most chilling accounts of changeling lore comes from Ireland, where the story of Bridget Cleary serves as a grim reminder of the dangers of superstition. In 1895, Bridget, a young woman from County Tipperary, fell ill and began to exhibit strange symptoms. Her husband, Michael Cleary, became convinced that she had been taken by the fairies and replaced with a changeling. In a desperate act of madness, Michael attempted to drive out the fairy with fire. In his madness, he set his wife ablaze by throwing an oil lamp on her. Bridget Cleary's tragic fate, often referred to as the last witch burning in Ireland, highlights the dark side of the changeling myth. Her memory lingers still to this day, whispered in the haunting refrain of an Irish nursery rhyme. Are you a witch, or are you a fairy, or are you the wife of Michael Cleary? It serves as a chilling reminder of the lengths to which fear and superstition can drive us. And so the changeling myth serves as a cautionary tale, warning us of the dangers that lurk just beyond the edge of the firelight, in the shadowy realms where fairies dwell. It is a tale that reminds us of the fragility of life, the fear of the unknown, and the lengths to which we will go to protect those we love, even when the threat may be more imagined than real. Throughout English history, there are tales that whisper of the extraordinary, stories that seem to straddle the line between the mundane and the mystical. One such tale comes to us from the 12th century, a story that has perplexed and intrigued scholars for centuries, the tale of the green children of Woolpit. In the quiet village of Woolpit, nestled in the Suffolk countryside, a most peculiar event took place. One day, the villagers discovered two children wandering near the edge of a pit, hence the name Woolpit, derived from the Old English wolf pit, meaning a pit for trapping wolves. These were no ordinary children, however, for their skin was a striking shade of green, a hue that seemed to mark them as beings from beyond our world. The children, a boy and a girl, spoke in a language that none could understand, their words as strange and foreign as their appearance. When questioned, the children claimed to come from a land known as St. Martin's Land, a place bathed in perpetual twilight, where the sun never fully rose nor set. It was a land, they said, where everything was tinged with the same eerie green that colored their skin. As the villagers tried to make sense of this tale, they were left to wonder, had these children wandered from some hidden corner of our own world, or had they perhaps stepped out from the very realm of the fairies themselves? Over time, the green hue of the children's skin began to fade, suggesting that perhaps their strange coloration was a result of diet or environment. Yet despite their acclimation to the human world, the boy, weakened by the ordeal, succumbed to illness and passed away. The girl, however, thrived, eventually integrating into society, learning the local language and adopting the customs of her new home. She grew into womanhood, her origins fading into the shadows of memory, yet her story endured, passed down through the generations as a curious relic of the past. Historians Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newburgh, both chroniclers of their time, saw fit to record this strange event, lending it a degree of credibility that has fascinated scholars and folklorists alike. Were these green children indeed fairy changelings, as some have suggested? Or were they perhaps travelers from a distant hidden land, a place where the ordinary laws of nature do not apply? Whatever the truth may be, the tale of the green children of Woolpit serves as a potent reminder of the enduring power of myth, the way in which the human mind seeks to blend the known with the unknown, weaving stories that captivate and confound in equal measure. Even now, centuries later, the mystery remains unsolved, a testament to the strange and wondrous world that lies just beyond the edge of our understanding. Come with me now as we precariously traverse around the edges of the elusive fairy rings. These curious formations, often found in grassy meadows or nestled within the dense ancient forests, have long stirred the imagination of those who stumble upon them. At first glance, they might seem like nothing more than a natural occurrence, a simple ring of mushrooms. However, let us not be so hasty to dismiss them as mere botanical curiosities. For centuries, these rings have been enveloped in a shroud of mystery and magic, believed to be the very footprints of fairies as they dance beneath the light of the moon. In the British Isles, particularly in the rolling hills of Ireland and Scotland, it is said that these rings are the remnants of the fair folk's nocturnal revelries. To stumble into one, it is believed, is to risk being whisked away to the fairy realm, an enchanting yet perilous world where the rules of time and reality do not align with our own. Those who have dared to cross this boundary, willingly or otherwise, often find themselves at the mercy of the fairies' whims, with outcomes that are as unpredictable as the fair folk themselves. In France, these rings are often referred to as ronds de sorcière, or sorcerers' rings. The French, with their flair for the dramatic, believed these circles were forged by the devilish dances of witches or malevolent spirits. To step into such a ring was to invite misfortune, a fate sealed by dark forces beyond mortal comprehension. Meanwhile, in the dense, shadowy forests of Germany, fairy rings took on a more sinister reputation. They were thought to be the gathering places of witches on Walpurgis night, a time when the veil between the human world and the supernatural was at its thinnest. Here, too, the rings were seen as portals to other realms, places where one might inadvertently stumble upon the dwellings of creatures best left undisturbed. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of these mystical circles is their connection to the passage of time. In the realm of the fairies, it is said that time flows differently. What seems like mere hours in their world can translate to years in ours. This is a notion steeped in both wonder and dread, as it blurs the line between the temporal and the eternal, leaving one to question the very nature of reality itself. Allow me to share with you a tale that beautifully encapsulates this phenomenon. A tale from the 13th century concerning a Scottish laird and poet known as Thomas the Rhymer. It is said that one day, while wandering near Eildon Hill in the Scottish borders, Thomas encountered the fairy queen herself. Enraptured by her beauty and power, he was taken to the land of the fairies, a place of unparalleled wonder. There he spent what felt like mere hours, indulging in the fairy realm's enchanting splendors. But upon his return to the mortal world, he was shocked to discover that 7 long years had passed. This extraordinary experience did not leave Thomas unchanged. The fairy queen, it is said, endowed him with the gift of prophecy, a power that made him a figure of great renown in Scotland. His prophecies were so revered that even kings took heed of his words. Yet this tale is more than just a story of magical gifts and otherworldly adventures. It is a poignant reminder of the enigmatic nature of time within the fairy realm, where the boundary between past, present, and future seems to dissolve like mist under the morning sun. And so, as we tread carefully around these ancient rings, we are reminded of the delicate balance between our world and the one just beyond, a world where time flows differently, and where even the simplest of natural phenomena can hold a deeper, more mysterious significance. Next, we have a being from fairy folklore that evokes both a sense of comfort and a touch of the mystical. Ah, the brownie. These small, stout-hearted creatures are said to dwell within the quiet corners of homes across Scotland and northern England, where they serve as unseen yet diligent helpers. Unlike the mischievous sprites or the more formidable fair folk, brownies are often depicted as benevolent spirits, devoted to aiding the households they choose to inhabit. Their appearance, while seldom witnessed by human eyes, is generally described as small and somewhat rough-hewn, large, expressive eyes that gleam in the firelight, with tattered garments and perhaps a slightly weathered look, as though they've spent many a long night toiling by the hearth. Despite their somewhat humble attire, brownies are respected and even revered by those who know of their presence. Now, what do these industrious little beings do, you might ask? Well, the tales tell us that brownies take it upon themselves to perform household tasks during the night, sweeping floors, churning butter, and even mending clothes. They ask for little in return, only that the home's inhabitants leave out a small offering of food, often a bowl of cream or a bit of bread and honey, as a token of appreciation. But beware. While brownies are kind and helpful, they are also known to be sensitive to insults or neglect. Even certain acts with the purest of intentions, say someone were to leave their brownie a gift of clothing, is enough to insult these small but proud creatures. In the lore of the Scottish Highlands, brownies are closely linked to the spirit of the hearth, embodying the warmth and sustenance of the home. They are said to be particularly attached to old, well-established houses where generations have lived and labored. Some tales suggest that brownies may be the spirits of ancestors, returning to watch over their descendants, a decidedly comforting thought. Brownies are also known to be fiercely protective of the homes they serve. There are stories of brownies driving away thieves, chasing away malevolent spirits, and even helping the family through hard times with their wisdom and foresight. Yet, like all fairies, they can also be mischievous if slighted or neglected. A family that fails to leave out the brownie's nightly offering might find their shoes filled with pebbles or their milk turned sour. Indeed, not all brownies are quite so benevolent. In some stories, a brownie might take on a darker aspect, becoming what is known as a boggart, a mischievous or even malevolent spirit that causes trouble for the household. This transformation is often said to occur if the brownie is mistreated or disrespected, thus reinforcing the importance of treating these little helpers with the utmost care and courtesy. One of the most famous tales of a brownie comes from the borders of Scotland, where a kind family once lived in a small, thatched cottage. Every night, after the family had gone to bed, the brownie would emerge from his hiding place, a dark corner near the hearth, to sweep the floors, polish the silver, and mend the family's clothes. In return, the family would leave a small offering of cream or honey, which the brownie would gratefully accept before returning to his secret nook before dawn. However, the brownie's work was not to be taken for granted, and the family knew better than to try to reward him with anything more than his simple fare. It is said that one night, the lady of the house, feeling particularly grateful for the brownie's efforts, decided to leave him a fine set of clothes as a gift. When the brownie discovered the garments, he was deeply offended and saddened, for such a gift signaled that his help was no longer wanted. To accept the clothing would mean he was no longer needed, and with a heavy heart, he would leave the household, never to return. The brownie donned the clothes and, with a sorrowful farewell, left the cottage, never to return. In other versions of the tale, the brownie, upon receiving the clothes, bursts into song, celebrating his newfound freedom and joyously skipping out of the house, leaving the family to fend for themselves. The lesson in these stories is clear. Brownies are to be respected and appreciated, but never spoiled, for they value their independence above all else. Now, if we venture eastward into the Slavic lands, we encounter the domovoi, a cousin of the brownie, yet with a distinct character all his own. The domovoi, much like the brownie, is the household spirit par excellence in Slavic folklore. He is often depicted as a small elderly man with a long beard, sometimes covered in animal fur, or even resembling a small domestic animal himself. He dwells in the hearth, the heart of the home, or sometimes beneath the floorboards, quietly overseeing the household's affairs. The domovoi is a protective spirit, guarding the family and ensuring that the home is safe and prosperous. Like the brownie, the domovoi will help with household chores, especially those that maintain the warmth and well-being of the household, such as tending to the fire or looking after the livestock. In return, he asks for offerings, often bread, milk, or a piece of cloth, and above all, respect. Yet the domovoi too has a more temperamental side. If he is angered, perhaps by a lack of offerings, neglect, or disrespect, he may cause mischief or even misfortune. A cold hearth, spoiled food, or restless animals might all be signs of a displeased domovoi. In more severe cases, a domovoi may leave the household altogether, taking its protective blessings with him, a loss deeply feared by those who rely on his guardianship. There's also an intriguing belief that the domovoi is deeply connected to the ancestors of the family, much like the brownie. He is sometimes considered the spirit of a deceased family member, returning to care for his descendants. This connection to the ancestral line adds a layer of reverence to the way in which the domovoi is treated, as he is not just a household spirit, but a link to the family's past. So whether in the misty glens of Scotland or the snow-clad villages of Eastern Europe, the brownie and the domovoi remind us of the old belief that our homes are shared spaces, not just with our living kin, but with the spirits who guard and guide us. Spirits who, though unseen, are ever present, ensuring that the fire burns bright and the family prospers. Continuing along our journey through the mysterious lands of the Slavs, we come across the Vili, those captivating and enigmatic beings of Slavic lore whose beauty and power have echoed through the forests, mountains, and rivers of Eastern Europe for centuries. Vila, or Vili in the plural, are ethereal maidens, as much a part of the natural world as the elements themselves. They are often depicted as stunningly beautiful women with long flowing hair, sometimes as golden as the sun, other times as fiery as the setting sky, garbed in diaphanous robes woven from the leaves, flowers, or feathers of the forest. Some tales even endow them with wings, allowing them to glide gracefully through the air, embodying the very essence of the untamed wilderness they inhabit. These creatures are, without doubt, breathtaking to behold, particularly in the twilight hours when they are most often glimpsed. However, beauty in the world of the Vili is as much a weapon as it is a gift. It is said by day, when the sun's harsh light reveals their true forms, the enchantment fades, and the Vili appear with eyes as red as embers, hair as white as frost, and skin lined with the wrinkles of ancient power. It is for this reason that they avoid the daylight, retreating to their hidden groves and springs until the dusk returns. The Vili are not merely passive dwellers of nature. They are fierce protectors of their domains, guardians of the forests, and custodians of the rivers and mountains. Woe betide any who would trespass upon their sacred ground, or worse, seek to harm it. Such offenders are met with a wrath as wild and untamed as the elements themselves. Storms, floods, and sudden gusts of wind are among the tools of their vengeance, and those who disrespect a villa may find themselves lost forever, swallowed up by the very landscape they sought to exploit. And yet, for all their fierceness, the Vili are not without a softer side. They are known to aid those who show them respect, offering healing to the sick, guidance to the lost, and even bestowing gifts upon the worthy. This duality, both nurturing and destructive, reflects the delicate balance of the natural world, a world that the Vili embody in all its splendor and ferocity. Consider, if you will, the tale of the Vila and the young hunter. One fateful day, as he wandered deep into the woods, he encountered a Vila dancing by a stream. Enchanted by her beauty, he ignored her warnings and drew closer, only to be met with a fierce wind that swept him away, never to be seen again. This story, like so many others, serves as a potent reminder of the Vili's power and the respect owed to the natural world. In another legend, a lost prince is saved by a Vila who nurses him back to health in her hidden forest glade. Though the prince falls deeply in love with her, the Vila, knowing that their worlds are too different, declines his proposal. Yet she does not send him away empty-handed. Instead, she gifts him a magical ring, ensuring his protection in the trials that lie ahead. This tale, filled with both love and longing, illustrates the Vili's role as both protector and enigma, a figure of both beauty and sorrow. The influence of the Vili extends far beyond the boundaries of folklore, finding a place in modern literature, most notably in J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. In these tales, the Vili are portrayed as extraordinarily beautiful, semi-human magical beings with an enchanting allure capable of bewitching men with a glance or a dance. They make their memorable appearance during the Quidditch World Cup in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, where they serve as mascots for the Bulgarian team. However, when angered, these Vili reveal a much more fearsome aspect, transforming into bird-like creatures that hurl fireballs, reminding us of the fine line between beauty and danger that defines their nature. And let us not forget Fleur Delacour, a character of particular note in the Harry Potter series, who possesses Vila blood. Her ethereal beauty, which captivates many throughout the saga, hints at her mystical heritage. But Fleur is more than just a pretty face. Her lineage endows her with an inner strength and fierce loyalty, echoing the qualities of the Vili of Slavic myth, both protectors and avengers. Thus, the Vili stand as a testament to the untamed spirit of nature, beautiful yet perilous, nurturing yet unforgiving. They remind us of the power and mystery of the natural world and the respect it commands. Whether as protectors, avengers, or tragic figures, the Vili endure as a symbol of the delicate balance between humanity and the environment, a balance that we would do well to remember. Before we take our leave from the enchanting realms of the Slavs, it would be remiss of us not to mention the Samodivas, the Bulgarian counterparts of the Vili. Like the Vili, these bewitching spirits are bound to the wilds, their beauty as alluring as it is perilous. However, folklore suggests that the Samodevas are perhaps even more dangerous than their Slavic sisters. With their fiery eyes and deadly charms, they are known to draw men into a fatal dance from which few return. If the tales of the Samodevas have piqued your curiosity, dear friends, and you would like to delve deeper into the lore of these enchanting yet often fatal beings, do let us know in the comments below. Perhaps in the future we might dedicate an entire exploration to their mysterious and captivating world. As we tread carefully through the twilight of these ancient tales, it's crucial to remember that the fair folk, for all their alluring danger, are not without their vulnerabilities. Indeed, our ancestors were well versed in the ancient protections that could be wielded against these enigmatic beings. These methods, passed down through generations, served as a safeguard against the unpredictable and sometimes perilous encounters with the otherworldly. First among these defenses is cold iron, a material long believed to repel the supernatural. In the Celtic and European traditions, iron was seen as the essence of the mundane world, a grounding force that could counteract the ethereal nature of fairies. A horseshoe hung above the door or a simple iron nail placed in a cradle was thought to be enough to keep the fair folk at bay. This wasn't mere superstition, but a practical means of protection in a world where the boundary between our world and theirs was ever so thin. Then there's salt, a humble yet powerful substance, revered for its purifying qualities. It was common practice to sprinkle salt across thresholds or around one's bed to thwart any fairy from entering uninvited. A line of salt could serve as an impenetrable barrier, and in moments of dire need, a handful cast into the air might break a fairy's spell, banishing them from the premises. In Irish folk remedies, salt was often combined with a recitation of the Lord's Prayer to cure those who might have been fairy-struck, reinforcing its role as a potent safeguard against the otherworldly. The natural world provided its own arsenal of protective charms. The rowan tree, with its bright red berries, was particularly potent against fairy enchantment. Branches of rowan were hung above doorways or worn as amulets to ward off malevolent spirits. The hawthorn tree, sacred to the fairies, was another potent symbol. Treated with respect, it could protect a household. Mistreated, it could invite the wrath of the fairy host. Running water, a stream or river, was also believed to act as a barrier against certain forms of fairy mischief. It was said in some cultures that fairies, with all their powers, could not cross running water. Thus, homes built near streams or travelers who crossed a river could find themselves safe from the reach of these supernatural beings. It was also widely believed that one should never reveal their true name to a fairy. Names hold power, and to give a fairy your name was to give them dominion over you, leaving you vulnerable to their whims. In the same vein, one should never make a deal with the fae, as their bargains often came with a steep and unforeseen price. If you ever find yourself in the fairy realm, whether by accident or invitation, it is imperative that you never eat or drink anything offered to you. To do so is to risk being bound to that world forever, unable to return to the mortal plane. The food and drink of the fae, though tempting, is laced with enchantments that tether your soul to their land, blurring the line between our world and theirs. And then there is the power of noise and laughter. Sudden loud sounds, such as the ringing of bells or the banging of pots, were believed to drive away fairies. Even laughter, joyous and unrestrained, was said to break the hold of a fairy's spell, dispelling their magic and sending them scurrying back to the shadows. So, dear friends, while the fair folk may be as capricious as the wind and as enchanting as a summer's dawn, they are not without their perils or their vulnerabilities. Armed with these ancient protections, one might dare to navigate the realms of the fairies with a measure of confidence, though never without the respect such beings demand. Remember these safeguards well, for you will need them as we step into our next chapter, where the light and shadow of the Seelie and Unseelie courts await. Here we come to the Seelie Court, a name that evokes images of sunlight filtering through ancient forests, the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze, and the soft, melodious laughter of unseen beings. Yet while the Seelie Court is often regarded as the blessed court, their benevolence is not to be taken for granted, for these fair folk are as capricious as the winds that carry their whispers. The Seelie Court, my dear friends, represents the brighter aspect of the fairy realm, composed of those beings who, more often than not, show kindness and favor to humankind. The term Seelie itself, derived from the Scots word for happy, lucky, or blessed, reflects their generally benign nature. But do not be fooled. These radiant, ethereal beings, with their association to the positive aspects of nature, such as sunlight, flowers, and lush, verdant landscapes, demand respect. To slight them, even unintentionally, is to invite their ire, and their retribution can be as swift as it is unexpected. The Seelie Court is most active during the twilight hours or at dawn, those liminal times when the veil between our world and theirs is at its thinnest. It is during these times, particularly in the blooming seasons of spring and summer, that one might catch a fleeting glimpse of these fair folk, if they are fortunate, of course, and it is during these moments of encounter that the true nature of the Seelie Court reveals itself. Consider, if you will, the tale of the fairy midwife, a story passed down through the generations as both a testament to the Seelie Court's kindness and a cautionary tale of the dangers inherent in even the most benign of interactions with the fair folk. One quiet night, a midwife was roused from her slumber by a knock at her door. A mysterious stranger, cloaked in secrecy, had come to request her assistance in delivering a child. With her heart full of duty, the midwife followed the stranger into the deep woods, where the landscape seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light. Soon they arrived at a grand ethereal hall, and the midwife realized she had been brought into the very heart of the Seelie Court. With the same care she would show any human mother, the midwife helped bring a healthy child into the world. As a token of their gratitude, the fairy family bestowed upon her a pouch of gold and a small jar of ointment, instructing her to apply the ointment to the newborn's eyes. But, as fate would have it, a drop of the ointment touched the midwife's own eye, and in that instant she could see the fairies as they truly were. Radiant, awe-inspiring beings, more beautiful and powerful than anything she had ever imagined. From that day forward, the midwife retained her newfound sight, able to perceive the fairies where others could not. In one version of the tale, she lives out her days in relative peace, her life enriched by her otherworldly experiences. But, as with all fairy tales, there exists an alternate ending, one where the midwife, upon recognizing a fairy in the marketplace, addresses her directly. The fairy, realizing the midwife could see her true form, reacts with anger, touching the midwife's eye and blinding her to the fairy realm forever. This tale, dear listeners, serves as a reminder of the Seelie Court's dual nature. Benevolent, yes, but not without their strict codes and boundaries. They may offer assistance, deliver warnings, or even bestow blessings, but they expect respect in return. As you navigate the world of the fair folk, remember that even the blessed court demands a measure of reverence, for to cross them is to risk the wrath of beings far older and more powerful than we can comprehend. However, what is light without darkness? As the sun dips below the horizon and the shadows lengthen, we find ourselves drawn inexorably toward the darker recesses of the fairy realm, a place where even the bravest of souls dare not tread. Here in the midnight gloom lies the domain of the Unseelie Court, a gathering of fairies whose very name, Unseelie, means unholy. These are not the whimsical sprites of sunlit glades, but malevolent beings who delight in the suffering and despair of humankind. This is the unblessed court, where beauty is a mask for malice, and every glance or gesture conceals a cruel intent. The Unseelie Court represents the shadow side of the fairy world, a mirror to the Seelie Court's light. Yet, unlike their Seelie counterparts, the fairies of the Unseelie Court are not bound by any code of honor or reciprocity. Their hearts are cold, their eyes sharp with malice, and their actions driven by a deep-seated desire to torment and deceive. These are the fair folk who stalk the barren moors, who ride the storm winds, and who whisper dark temptations into the ears of those foolish enough to listen. One of the most fearsome aspects of the Unseelie Court is their participation in the wild hunt, an event that strikes fear into the hearts of mortals across the land. The wild hunt, also known as the Hunt of the Sloth, is a spectral, ghostly procession of fairies, led by a powerful and ruthless fairy lord or lady, who in some versions of the tale goes by the name of Nicknevin. It is said that on stormy nights the skies above are filled with the sound of thundering hooves, the baying of hounds, and the mournful wails of lost souls. Those unlucky enough to find themselves in the path of the wild hunt are faced with a terrible fate. They might be abducted by the fairies, dragged into the other world, or even struck dead on the spot. But the horrors of the Unseelie Court do not end with the wild hunt. Among their ranks are creatures so vile, so steeped in blood and darkness, that even the boldest warrior would blanch at the sight of them. Consider, if you will, the Redcaps, dreadful goblins who haunt the ruins of castles and ancient battlefields. These twisted beings are named for the blood-soaked caps they wear, for they must kill regularly to keep their caps red, lest they perish themselves. With their iron-shod boots and razor-sharp claws, they are relentless in their pursuit of any who dare trespass in their domain. And then there are the Slaw, or the host of the unforgiven dead. These lost souls, banished from both heaven and hell, are said to fly across the night sky in a spectral horde, sweeping down to snatch the souls of the dying before they can be claimed by the divine. They are feared even by other fairies, for their presence signals doom and despair, and their touch brings nothing but death. The Unseelie Court is also home to the bogies, sinister shapeshifters who take pleasure in leading travelers astray, luring them into deadly bogs or treacherous forests from which they never return. The Dullahan, the headless horseman who rides the night with a whip made from a human spine, is yet another of their dreadful company, a harbinger of death who calls out the names of those fated to die. In this dark court there is no mercy, no forgiveness, and no escape. Unlike the Seelie Court, where a respectful plea might earn a reprieve, the Unseelie Court operates on cruelty and chaos. Their power is strongest during the cold, dark months of autumn and winter, when the veil between worlds is thin and the light of the sun is weak. And yet, despite their malevolence, the Unseelie Court is not without purpose. They are the embodiment of nature's darker side, the storm that destroys as much as it renews, the night that conceals as much as it reveals. In this way, they are the counterbalance to the Seelie Court, for just as there can be no day without night, there can be no light without shadow. So, dear friends, as we conclude our exploration of the fairy realm, remember this: to encounter the Unseelie Court is to face the very embodiment of the wild, untamed forces of the world. They are not to be trifled with, nor are they to be underestimated. For in their world, the line between the living and the dead is a mere whisper, and the path to ruin is as thin as the blade of a redcap's knife. Should you ever find yourself caught in the eerie glow of a fairy light, or hear the distant wail of the wild hunt, heed this warning. Turn back, keep your wits about you, and pray that the fair folk pass you by, for once you are ensnared in the grasp of the Unseelie Court, there may be no return. As we draw near to the close of our exploration, we must turn our gaze to the early 20th century, a time when the world stood on the brink of modernity, yet still clung to the age-old mysteries that had shaped human understanding for centuries. It was in this era, amidst the hum of industrial progress and the burgeoning field of science, that two young girls in the quaint village of Cottingley, West Yorkshire, would reignite a belief in the ethereal beings that dwell just beyond the veil of the known world. In 1917, Elsie Wright and her cousin Frances Griffiths captured a series of photographs that would captivate the public imagination, the Cottingley Fairies. These images, showing delicate winged figures dancing in the woods, were hailed by some as incontrovertible proof of the existence of fairies. Even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the esteemed creator of Sherlock Holmes, lent his voice to the chorus of believers, seeing in these photographs the validation of a world beyond our own. The Cottingley Fairies were more than just an innocent hoax, though Elsie and Frances would later admit to fabricating most of the images using simple cardboard cutouts. The true power of these photographs lay not in their authenticity, but in the deep-seated need they revealed. A yearning for wonder, for a connection to the mystical, and for a world where the boundaries of reality could still be bent by the unseen. Yet the Cottingley Fairies were not an isolated phenomenon. The early 20th century also saw the rise of what we might call the fairy census, an informal yet widespread effort to document contemporary encounters with fairies across Britain and beyond. This movement was part of a broader fascination with the supernatural, a reflection of the lingering influence of Victorian Romanticism and the renewed interest in folklore. From rural hamlets to bustling cities, testimonies poured in, recounting encounters with the otherworldly. These stories ranged from the whimsical to the unsettling, painting a diverse and complex portrait of fairy belief in a modern world. People spoke of fairies that helped with household chores, of spirits that haunted lonely moors, and of spectral figures that led travelers astray on moonlit nights. The fairy census revealed that despite the encroaching march of progress, belief in fairies remained a vibrant part of the cultural fabric. It showed that these stories, far from being mere relics of a bygone era, continued to evolve and adapt, finding new life in the hearts and minds of those who sought to glimpse the unseen. Together, the Cottingley fairies and the fairy census offer a poignant reminder of the enduring power of myth. They illustrate how, even in the face of modernity, the human soul still craves the mysteries of the unknown. These tales, whether believed or denied, serve as a testament to our collective longing for a world where magic is real, where fairies dance in the shadows, and where the mundane is forever touched by the supernatural. As we close this chapter, it's worth heeding the warning from J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. Every time a child says, "I don't believe in fairies," there is a fairy somewhere that falls down dead. The Cottingley fairies, with their famous photographs taken in 1917, reignited the world's belief in the existence of these ethereal beings, even in the midst of a rapidly modernizing world. The belief in fairies is not confined to ancient legends and distant lands. It is a living tradition, one that continues to inspire, to challenge, and to captivate, much as it has for centuries. And so, as we prepare to take our leave of this enchanted journey, let us remember that the fair folk are never far away, watching from the corners of our imagination, ready to step into our world when least expected. My dear friends, our tale for this evening has concluded, but our journey does not end here. Visit us again soon. Here in our little corner of the ether, we shall unravel another tale. A story imbued with fear, superstition, and perhaps the occasional sprinkle of fairy dust. We hope you enjoyed tonight's story. Join us again as we delve into the pages of history, folklore, and some things that make us wonder, and perhaps others that make us shudder. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to SkaryTales. We're a small channel, but with your help, we'll continue to grow. Together, we'll explore the shadows and the light of the world's most enchanting and terrifying tales. Until next time, remember that every tale hides a truth, and every truth hides a tale. Sleep well, and good night.